Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome to Vishwa Talks. My name is Mani, and I'd like to thank you all for attending today's event. For those of you who have attended a Vishwa Talk before, a warm welcome back. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, here's a little bit about us. Vishwa Talks is an initiative by Vishwa. Vishwa is an online platform for everyday change makers and social champions. It is a crowdfunding and crowdsourcing platform that is aimed at helping anyone find the support they need in their efforts and endeavors, not just to help themselves, but to help others, and in the process, make the world a better place. Vishwa Talks are a series of weekly webinars hosted every Saturday that are focused on gaining in-depth knowledge from experts on a wide range of topics that are pertinent to the current context. Our speaker today is Paul Blanchflower, the director of Auroville Botanical Gardens. Paul came to India in 1991. He had studied forestry and ecology at Edinburgh University and came to stay in Auroville to learn more about tropical forestry. He has now been there for over 30 years and has spent his time working with native forests of South India. 20 years ago, he founded Auroville Botanical Gardens on a 50-acre-old empty cashew land, rescuing it from the threat of real estate development. It is now a beautifully restored environment which employs over 60 people and attracts numerous volunteers and visitors each year. The gardens promote restoration projects around South India, some of which will be showcased in today's talk. Today, he's going to be talking to us about how we can overcome our collective inertia and work towards restoring our environment by changing the landscape of our quarries and industrial belts. Now, without further ado, if I may please invite our speaker to start today's Vishwa Talk. Thank you.
Good morning to everybody. Thank you all for coming. And thank you to the Vishwa Foundation for organizing this talk. I will just now share my screen and then we'll go straight into the talk so that we can begin and enjoy. So absolutely, I am English. I came to India 30 years ago. And in England, I grew up in the forests. I was very much a child of the forest. I would spend many days, many weekends there walking in the forests with my family. And so I've always had this extraordinary connection to trees, to forests, and to really enjoying being in nature. When I went to Edinburgh, the obvious choice for me was to study ecology and forestry. And I was very lucky to be able to do that and spend 5 years there. And in the end there, I got very interested in the native forests of Scotland, which is the pine forests. And I was lucky enough to work with people in the Findhorn Foundation as they restored the Caledonian forest with the Trees for Life program that was initiated by Alan Watson. When I came to India, I came here because I was interested in tropical forestry and I wanted to learn about the tropics. I'd read about them as a child, I'd read stories, I'd done puzzles, I'd done all sorts of things that had attracted me to the forests of the tropics. And Auroville was an amazing chance to come and join into a collective experiment. So Auroville is a place in South India where in the 1960s, at the end of the 1960s and through the 70s, a barren piece of land was taken on and restored to a forest, which was an amazing attraction for someone like myself to come. Now, I joined Auroville in 1991, as been stated, but in the year 2000, after being in Auroville for 10 years, learning the species and learning basically about the local culture, attempting to even learn the local language to a limited success, I was lucky enough to be presented with an opportunity to establish a botanical gardens with a group of other people. And this was on 50 acres of land, which at the time was an empty old cashew tub that had been bulldozed by a property developer. Luckily, Auroville bought the land, and then we were able to establish the botanical gardens. Amazing groups of people that have worked at the botanical gardens, still work at the botanical gardens, designers, project managers, supervisors, people who work in the nursery, volunteers that come through. But it's also about teamwork when we go out and do other projects. As you'll see later on in the presentation, there are some extraordinary projects that are happening, which again, would not be possible without an extraordinary group of people that we've encountered who have this openness to working to restore the environment. And that, I think, is where we want to position ourselves, in the sense that we have a global situation. We've just had this conference in Glasgow, COP26. To some people, it has been a failure. To other people, it's been a sort of a grinding possibility, but not too exciting. And I think what we want to show in this talk is that as individuals, or as groups, as companies, as collectives, we can initiate change, and that we need to build that together. It's not about working against government, it's about working with government. And we have been lucky enough, even in the last year, to be starting to interact with the local government in Tamil Nadu. And so it's really about collaboration, and collaboration is what we need to look at to take forward the process that we can show you here in this presentation. Before I go a little further, there's just this one little philosophical moment that I would like to share with you, is that we are, as human beings, persuasive across the planet. We're in every situation, and we have changed the landscape in so many countries, in so many continents. There's very little forest that's left intact, and even the forests that are left intact are in threat. In the Amazon, in Indonesia, there's large areas of forest which are really basically the last lungs of the planet, that are still being chopped down for development of this industrial agricultural society that we've been promoting over the last 300 years. So unless we can create relationships between people, humanity, society, and the native forests, there's not much chance that they will survive into the next generations. And I'm going to take you through the experience we've had with native forests over the past 30 years, to look at how we got involved and how we created that relationship with the native forests. And once we've done that, I'll show you some of the projects where we've taken that native forest forward into society. So, understanding the native vegetation. In every part of India, in every part of the world, there are native plants that are naturally adapted to that region. And where we live, in Auroville, on the Coromandel coast, there is a native vegetation which is called the tropical dry evergreen forest. And within that forest, we'll find over 400 woody plants, trees, shrubs, lianas, even orchids. And those species make together a complex which we call the tropical dry evergreen forest, or the TDEF, as we say for short. This forest is amazing. It's evergreen throughout the year. Never is the ground open to the sun. So we get an extraordinary environment if we had this native forest. However, society, humans, civilizations have been interacting with the landscape in India for over 10,000 years. And for the vast majority of the plains of Tamil Nadu, it means that the native forests have been removed, either cleared for agriculture or simply felled to make way for to extract the timber, the firewood, and for the grazing. Amazingly, in Tamil Nadu, in South India, what we do is we find remnants of this native forest only around the temples. These are the only places in these sacred groves that the actual original forest is still existing. All the other forests have at some time been cut down and let regrow, even the reserve forests. And so it's around these sacred temples that we actually find the last remnants of the tropical dry evergreen forest. And I think this is an extraordinary clue for us to realize that it's this connection to the sacred, the connection to our ancestors, which we gain through these areas. It happens around the world that the native plants are those plants that connect us all the way back to our ancestors. That's where our medicines originally came from. That's where our connections to nature have grown from. And so these sacred groves that contain the last remnants of this native forest are a particularly poignant part of the forests that we are working with. And I think it also indicates to us that the sacredness is really very much a part of what we're trying to do. Yes, we're trying to solve an environmental crisis, but at the same time, we're trying to find a spiritual way forward so that we as individual humans can step back and find a way forward that allows us to work together with nature. Again, a collaboration. So why conserve the tropical dry evergreen forest? Well, in actual fact, this forest is the most endangered type in India, with only a few hundred acres left. It's an extraordinary forest because the fruits support an amazing area of biodiversity around them. Butterflies, birds, and other important insects, such as the bees, which are so important for the agricultural systems around, are also found in this forest and supported by the continuous year-round fruiting events that happen. So the tropical dry evergreen forest is an extraordinary resource that if only we could understand it more and present it back to society, people would understand that it's one of those extraordinary resources that as humans we are leaving behind. When we use the tropical dry evergreen forest, we can create beautiful landscapes. And that is another part at which we'll talk about further as we go through the talk. But throughout the year, we have fruits, we have flowers, we have seeding events that will support the butterflies, the birds, the insects, and those in turn will support another hierarchy of animals. So this is a really amazing forest that if we use in our world today, we can create something that is lasting, beautiful, and sustainable. And we can even go one step further. We can use these evergreen plants to create the parts of the gardens that we as humans enjoy together with as hedges. And as you can see in the pictures there, we've created an extraordinary maze, which when the visitors to the gardens come, the children really enjoy to get lost in that maze. There's a labyrinth, there's hedges. There's all of these things which are evergreen. They exist within the garden and they don't require that extra watering and that extra composting, which many other plants that are used in ornamental gardens require. And we do a lot of work to create the forests, and we have done over the years. We've created or intend to create more forests along the coast, which is where one of the natural parts of the tropical dry evergreen forest is found along the coast. But again, as you can imagine, planting on the bare sand is very challenging. So again, we have to use, you can see in the picture that there's a lot of aftercare involved where we're mulching the plants and shading them even with the palmyra leaves. But the basic fact is that if we can use this forest, we can establish new evergreen forests that are useful and productive towards society. The work we do at the Botanical Gardens is also very much to do with training and education. And when we're trying to create relationships with people, we need to introduce those people to the forest. When we have groups of school children coming, we are able to start to introduce them to the species. We've developed educational materials that they can work with. We take them into the nurseries. We get them involved in practical events like transplanting seedlings just to get their hands connected to the soil again. We also work with teachers. As you can see in the picture to the left, we have large gatherings of the environmental teachers of the bioregion. And most excitingly for us on the right-hand side, you'll see that we've started teaching adults and teaching adults the essence of ecological restoration and ecological horticulture. So now we're lucky enough to have been able to run 2 programs that last for 4 months, training people in the techniques of ecological restoration, which is so important as we try to create more projects throughout India. We're also constantly involved in researching and developing our knowledge base. We've worked with the forest for over 30 years, but we're always out there looking at the forest, trying to learn more. There's always so many new things and new techniques to understand within the forest. Collecting seeds is such an important part of our work as well. But we're surveying new areas, particularly to understand as we develop our projects across the south of India, how the species of the evergreen forest move across the open plains into the deciduous forest. It's not just a simple evergreen forest and then a deciduous forest as you move inland, but there's a continuum where the evergreen species move inland as well. So through continuous studies of different areas of remnant forest, we can understand the dynamics of these species as they cover the rest of India. And then, of course, we need to be able to share our resources. We need to take our resources online and develop comprehensive ways that people can interact with those species. Over the years, we've developed a number of websites, which during the next period of time, we're consolidating into one coherent, comprehensive online resource. So we have a digital herbarium where people can see the different types of plants with real-time photographs of the plants. We also have a plant identification website, which is called PlantIKey, where people can go and identify plants online. And there's also a number of other websites that are there which can help you as individuals get to know these species. And we also have mapping of where we've done our surveys. And we have, of course, our herbarium, which is located at the Botanical Gardens, where we keep a lot of information about all of the plants that we've been studying over the years. And so we know a lot about the forest. We know that the forest is something that we love, we care about, and that we're very enthusiastic about. And so we love to try and find ways to take this forest out into society at large. And as it says there on the left, it's great to have a dream or an idea. But as we go from an idea into materialization, we need a lot of energy and a lot of commitment. And that's something that we as a gardens have been able to develop over the last 20 years. And that we, as we move forward, are looking for more ways to collaborate and join energies towards this goal. And here we just pay particular attention to the fact that nurseries where we can grow the plants of the native forests are so important to any planting program. What you'll find is that when you go to commercial nurseries or even forest department nurseries, the range of species that are native is often very limited. You'll find that this is something that is inherent within the culture of commercial nurseries. When we're talking about the tropical dry green forest or any kind of native forest, we're often talking about 150, 200 different types of species. And so if we can create more nurseries that are dedicated to native trees, with more people going out, collecting the seeds and growing those seeds, that will fuel the next steps in a program to increase the native forests in South India. And so now I'll just take you through some of the projects that we've done over the years, just to give you an idea and a taste of some of the things that we've done. The Mahindra project just south of Pondicherry was our first large project. And the reason I put this one up is, one, it was our first project, but two, the way we stepped into this world was one of those connections. There was an architect called Bijoy Jain from Bombay who was working on this project, and he was very interested in vernacular architecture. And he came to Auroville because he knew some people in Auroville, and was directed to us because we were working with the vernacular landscape. And so a collaboration formed between the two of us. It was a project that we walked into not knowing very much, but by the end of it, we had learned a large amount about how to work on a large scale with a commercial company that had timelines and the inevitable delays, and the fact that the landscape was the last thing that anybody was working on in one of these projects. As you'll see, there was a lot of grass planted because as we went in, we needed to create the landscape, but amongst that grass, we were planting the native species that to this day are now growing through and creating a beautiful resort south of Pondicherry. After this project was finished, we were able to take on a large project in Chennai at a 5-star hotel. And the reason I'm mentioning this project is because, again, it was an extraordinary collaboration between an art curator and ourselves. The Hyatt had decided that the gardens should be dedicated to ceramic art. And there was a man called Ray Mika who was organizing the ceramic art. He was curating the gardens. And he approached us because he knew about our work with the tropical dry green forest, and he felt it was a great chance to bring art and ecology together in a landscape. This was a project that ran for 3 or 4 years and gave us another extraordinary opening to the experience of working in difficult conditions. The garden, as you see on the right, is on the 3rd floor. And also just logistics, and again, dealing with companies and learning the ropes of how to work at a commercial level. Once we were working on the Hyatt, we also began to pick up other projects. This one here, which is called K Resort, is quite close to Auroville. And it actually was on marginal agricultural land on the edge of a wetland. If you look at the photo in the center, you can see that stretching out behind one of the cottages is an empty land that floods seasonally every year. So the project here was really how to work with nature in an ecological way because we were in an environmentally sensitive area. Again, as you can see from the photos, we created a series of water bodies, we graded the land, and the water flows all the way down to the large lake that we created at the end of the property. This lake is now home to many, many water birds that come there throughout the year, as this area is never dry. Another challenge with this project was that we were in a flooded area, so everything had to be raised off the ground to allow for the fact that throughout the year, particularly in years like this, when there's good rains in this area, the grounds will flood. But everything remains 3 feet off the ground so that it functions as a resort. This project is in the presentation because it was a project we were invited to work on in Cork. And it wasn't an empty piece of land. It was the first time we were actually working within a forest, a beautiful forest up in the hills of Cork. It was an old cardamom plantation. And as we began to explore the land, we found that our love for forestry and our connection to the world of nature and our interest in trees rubbed off on the family that was responsible for this project. And together we had an extraordinary collaboration where we discovered the forest together and found ways to insert cottages amongst the trees, doing as little damage as possible to the environment. The cottages were again all raised. It was a steep slope. They were all raised and held at the back by these concrete walls. And in the end, we came up with a beautiful resort that's doing extremely well today. And it's amazing because it allows people to be in the heart of the forest, in the middle of Cork, in a comfortable way, which is a very nice experience for most people when they go there. Another project that we took on was with Total Environment in Ooty. Ooty is in the hills, and it's an ecology that we didn't understand. But we were invited up there, and luckily enough, we were able to find a local ecologist, Vasant Bosco, who was a young graduate from the Krishnamurti School, who had dedicated his life to the ecology of the area. And together with him, we created a project that looked at the native species, the shola species. It looked at the amazing tree ferns. And very importantly as well, it looked at the native grasses, which are the important ecological type that covers much of the hills up there. The hills of the Nilgiris, as you know, are covered in tea, which is an unnatural state for the hills. And so here we were able to explore a new ecology and develop ideas that were new for everybody in the area, which led to us creating large tree nurseries there of shola species and planting out shola forests amongst the tea plantations. So it was really an adventure. And at this point in the career of the Botanical Gardens, we were having a great adventure, traveling around South India, having lots of opportunities to work in extraordinary places with extraordinary people. And then again, we were able to move into a different world. We were able to scale up the project. Now, it's perhaps worth saying at this point that the work that we do it for financial reasons, as well as for ecological and spiritual reasons, because the financing from the projects that we do helps to run the gardens, which are not, as you can imagine, an easy thing to do. But since 2007, when we started with Mahindra, we've been running these projects, which every time we do it, we've been talking to people and encouraging them to use the native species within the landscape. And so we were lucky enough again to take on a large project with Ashok Leyland. And this really brings us to look at the industrial landscape north of Chennai. As you can see in the background, there's power stations, there's oil refineries, and this is Ashok Leyland's research and development campus at the north of Chennai in Ennore. They had 27 acres in a corner that they had decided they wanted to do something ecological with. It was a flat ground that was inundated every year. So taking the experience that we had learned with K Resort, working with the species that we knew could withstand the saline conditions that would be in this area, we were able to create a beautiful wetland forest for this research center. You'll see here the canals, the ponds, everything had been excavated. And as you see in the next slide, we started with an empty piece of land where we dug these canals and raised the soil. So rather than sitting with the existing ground level, we were able to raise the soil by 2 feet above the water line. And there we were able to plant a forest. The growth rates here were extraordinary for some reason, which we never really understood. But within 2-3 years, there was a dense, vibrant forest that was covering the entire area. And the bird life and animal life quickly returned into this area. Ashok Leyland was the first of our interactions with a large industrial corporation. We'd done shelter belts, we'd done some plantations for corporations in the past, because corporations can understand and learn the fact that if we have a shelter belt where we're protecting biodiversity, this can enhance the agricultural potential of the area by providing refuge for bees and other pollinators that can fly out into the agricultural lands and perform the vital pollination tasks that are required in agriculture. But then we expanded our scope once more, and we were introduced to the Ramco group, particularly with the Ramco Cement team. Mining for the limestone in different areas creates a landscape that at times can look devoid of vegetation and a bit bleak. However, we were lucky enough again to work with a team that was committed to creating an extraordinary transformation of the land. The project that you see there on the slide is something we began in 2019 in Pandalgudi. Pandalgudi is an area south of Madurai. It's an area where the rainfall is extremely limited, as it's in the rain shadows of the Western Ghats and also Sri Lanka. So the annual rainfall of that area is limited to around 600 mm per year. We took on an old mining area of around 65 acres, a heap of large amounts of stone and crushed rock that was taken out of the mines during the mining operation. We sculpted, as you can see, into a terraced hill, which we were then able to plant. In this project, we planted over 65,000 trees and shrubs. The work that we did was so much a part of the Ramco team's work. Without them, this project would have never taken off. The enthusiasm and interest from the team was extraordinary and gave us this opportunity to develop this incredible project. Over the next years, this project has now, you'll see here, the orange area, which is where we started, 65 acres. In the next year, we took on another 120 acres, 200 acres here in Pit 1, and that work was completed this year. We're now expanding on another 100 acres around that area to develop an extraordinary area which will become a wildlife sanctuary and a real support to biodiversity in the area. And eventually, over the next 4 to 5 years, as the other mines in the area become exhausted, we hope to expand this to over 1 kilometer length and cover 800 acres of forestry land. This is a step forward by the Ramco Cement company, and it's an extraordinary testament to them and their team to make these sort of projects possible. Here you get an idea of some of the work that we were engaged in to create that park. You can see that in the beginning it was an empty piece of land, mainly covered with rubble and prosopis, which is a thorny species that takes over much of South India. We had to clear the area. We sculpted the landscape. We brought in an extraordinary number of rocks which were lying around the area, and we were able to move forward within 2.5 years to create an extraordinary landscape. And today, this is what some of the area looks like. We have ponds, we have forests, and we have gardens. And this is now open to the local schools to visit and to learn about the ecology of the area and to learn about the ideas behind ecological restoration. It's an extraordinary place, which every time I go there, I'm always amazed at how quickly and calmly the trees are turning a barren landscape into a verdant forest, which is attracting wildlife around the area. We've also been able to put our thoughts and creative energy into looking at a post-industrial landscape. The Ramco Prussia plant in Auroville was decommissioned a number of years ago, and we're now in the process of turning this into an ecological adventure park. We're taking the main structures have been taken down, these metal structures, and we're left with these concrete silos, which are 30 meters in height. We hope to create a sort of post-industrial anchor wat in the area. And amongst this area, we will create an environmental education center, and we will also create adventure activities that the local youth and students at the local Apex Training Center will be able to use. We'll also have a management training center where we can bring people from all over the country to experience this extraordinary place. And as you can see from these slides, which are the conceptual images that we began with, we're hoping to, inside these concrete hoppers, create verdant gardens, and we'll create ponds and water bodies, but at the same time, we will create an ecological environment that people can enjoy. There's so much to say, so much more, but as time moves on, I don't want to take up too much more time, but there's 2 or 3 other points I would like to make towards the end of this presentation. One is that how do we read the larger landscapes? It can be daunting. And having listened to this presentation, you may find that you think, oh, these guys are super experienced and they know what they're doing so much, but how can I as an individual do it? Well, I would like to show and say to you that it's not that difficult. It's all about walking the land and showing an interest in the land. Here, what you see on the right-hand side is a hillock near Hyderabad that we worked on for a developer. They had never walked across the land, even though they owned the land. And so by walking the land and looking and being interested in what was there, we could discover the landscape. We could get ourselves back into connection with the land that was there. Again, you can see the presentation where we took the hills and we made seemingly complex graphics. We took the gradients of the land, but all of this work is very easy to do. You can simply do it with your cell phone or a handheld GPS. And all of the work that we do simply works with Google Earth, which is a technology that all of us have access to. You can simply go online and download the tracks that you've walked, and with those tracks, you can create presentations and understandings of the landscape such as these. And another important part of going back into the landscape is really naming the landscape. By giving names to the rocks, by understanding which the trees there, we start to create that all-important relationship with the landscape. And it's by creating this landscape that people can connect to that we find that we can then draw people back into the landscape. No longer is it a barren, empty, undefined world. It becomes an adventure where people move from place to place and discover the land. And this is also a very, very important part of creating these relationships. And finally, I touch on one of the projects that we're involved in now, which is the environmental planning of a town called Rajapaliam in the south. We're moving up in scale one more time. This time we're looking at an area of 141 square kilometers, which is close to the Western Ghats. Within this LPA, which means the local planning area, there's 52 water reservoirs, which are connected to the rivers that flow out of the Western Ghats. This is an extraordinarily beautiful heritage landscape that has evolved over hundreds of years as different civilizations have come and etched their marks into the landscape to create a vibrant and productive area. How can we turn or restore this environment through planning? How can we reconnect the people with the land? As our modern society moves forward, as our industrial age comes to this point in time where people want development, where people need to move forward, how can we connect that movement with the land itself? You'll see here a picture from Google again, where you can see the town of Rajapaliam, nestled right up against an extraordinary hill called Sanjeevi Malai. And this is one of the unique parts of Rajapaliam. It's a town next to a hill. And the hill is there within many of the people's imaginations and emotions of the town. It's 280 hectares, which is 2.8 square kilometers. But many, many people of the town had never been up the hill. There's a disconnection between the people of the town and the hill that they see every day in their lives. How can we connect the people back to this hill? At the moment, it's a hill that's been planted with some exotic species. There's vast areas that are open. It's open to fire most years, and it's heavily grazed. So the question for us as we move forward in this project is how can we take that hill and connect the people back to it? How can we interact with the forest department and get the forest department to open their hearts to allow the people back into the hill to take care of the hill that is so much part of their town? On a recent botanical expedition up at that hill, we found 150 plant species, all native, that are tucked away, sometimes only one or two of a particular species. But the remnant vegetation there indicates to us that this was once an incredibly beautiful evergreen forest that was covering the top of these hills. And as we move forward with this project, We hope that we can restore that environment back to something of what it was before it became degraded. And so I come to the end of the talk, hopefully within the time limit that's been allowed to me. What next? I think these are the points that I would like to just reconnect us to as I come to the end of this presentation. We need to understand the historical narrative of the land that we inhabit. And that means to understand the native species. They can tell us so much about where we are. And we understand that we are a generation, which is not the end generation, nor is it the first generation. There have been so many generations of people that have inhabited these lands before us. And hopefully there will be many generations of people that will also inhabit the lands after us. We are stewards of the land. And our challenge in life is to leave the land richer than it was when we arrived. How can we do that? And I think at this particular moment in time, with the particular global consequences of climate change, we as individuals should be seeking ways to restore the environments upon which we depend so much. The work that we do has always been about scaling up. When I began, I started as a young 24-year-old living in the greenbelt of Auroville. I would spend my day working in the forest, collecting seeds, filling plastic bags, and creating a nursery. I worked alone. I would maybe create 200, 300 seedlings a year. And those seedlings, I would go and dig holes in the forest and plant myself with friends. These days, with a group of the Botanical Gardens, we produce over 100,000 seedlings, and we run a number of different projects. And with the groups that we're working with, particularly the Ramco group, we're also creating more nurseries where we can create more seedlings. And so creating nurseries is an integral part to what we do, and scaling up and creating models that empower people themselves to undertake the work is something that we're very interested in. And that is one of the things that we would love to try and do in Rajapaliam with the environmental town planning. Inspiring and developing the skill set of the next generation. We want young people to come and work with us, to learn the skills and to find ways to move forward as a group. That's why we've managed to run the ecological horticultural training program. We need to inspire and develop people, give people livelihoods, develop skills that they can use in their lives to step forward and do the work that is so urgently needed. The creation of plant nurseries is integral to any work that we want to do with native species. Native species are there for us as an extraordinary gift from nature. But if we don't create the nurseries, then all of our talk about creating native forests will go unheeded. And so even creating a plant nursery of 100 species of local trees and shrubs is something that will encourage people to go out there and plant them themselves. And when I say connecting the different elements required to undertake large-scale projects, that's where we need to work. We need to connect industry to government, to the environmentalists that are out there that have extraordinary knowledge of the ground, to the local people that have lived and work in the forests. How do we connect these different elements to create projects that benefit everyone? And the last point of helping people to see the potential that's there to restore our environment, I think it's clear for everybody that we need to restore the environment, that the land is tired, and at the moment we sit there and extract. Projects like this are enabling us to let the land heal itself, because in the end, it's not about the work that we do, but it's about the collaboration that we can inspire and connect humanity to work with nature to restore the forests and environments that are so important to our continued wealth and happiness. And with that, I would like to finish and say, I hope that you have managed to understand me, that I haven't spoken too fast or too quickly. And thank you very much for listening. And thank you to all of the people that we collaborate with, and especially to the Vishwa Foundation for organizing this talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. That was truly an insightful talk. We learned so much in the past 20 minutes about how ecology plays such a vital role. Can I ask my team to allow Mr. Deepak Srivastava to talk? Sir, you are muted.
Now it is okay. Am I
Yeah.
audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. First, let me introduce myself. I am Deepak Srivastava from Indian Forest Service. I am Additional Principal Chief Conservator of Forest in Government of Tamil Nadu. And a very good afternoon to Mr. Paul, entire Vishwa team, and all the participants. I will not take much time because if I will speak, my speech may take an hour. So I will just sum up what Mr. Paul's initiative has actually what I have taken from his speech, his talk. Actually, for the kind information of all the participants, this decade, this is 2021 to 2030, is the decade for ecological restoration declared by the United Nations. So ecological restoration is going to be a key element for restoration of our environment as a whole. I would just like to enlighten my participants that the government of Tamil Nadu, for the first time, I think, has formed a green climate company, which includes 3 missions: Tamil Nadu Climate Change Mission, Tamil Nadu Green Mission, and Tamil Nadu Wetlands Mission. Under this Green Tamil Nadu Mission, Mr. Paul and Ramco, Mrs. Nirmala ji also came to us and we had a detailed discussion. So what was shown in the last about Sanjeevi Malai, Rajapaliam, it is going to be a joint venture, and for the first time we are invoking private partnership in the rehabilitation of the degraded forest. So I would like to apprise the audience that the sole motto is to increase our green cover, forest and tree cover, from the present 23.80% to the 33% in the next 10 years. And why? Because and we have earmarked, not only earmarked, but we are trying to now rope in because land is a crunch. So therefore, 13.50 lakh hectares of land would be required for reaching this target, and 260 crore of seedlings would be required to be planted, full of native species. And not only it will be through the restoration of degraded forest, but through the promotion of agri-silviculture. On the farmlands also we need to valuable to the farmers so that we can have a sustainable green development program. Now coming to some of the questions were asked about sustainability. See, sustainability is about that whatever you plant, like what Mr. Paul showed, it was a mind-boggling videos and mind-boggling examples that how the real result is coming out. But problem is we have to estimate not only in terms of greenery, it is looking very good, but you see that how the air quality has improved in that area and how much carbon has been stocked in the biomass that is in the trees and below the biomass that is in the soils. For the kind information of all the participants, Tamil Nadu has in its forest cover 219 million tons of carbon sequestered, which is only 3% of the country's carbon stock. That is 7,124 million tons in the country, 219 million tons in the Tamil Nadu. So we propose to enhance 8 million tons of carbon each year and reach to somewhere about 270 million tons by the end of this decade, maybe more. So my request to all of you is please join hands with Government of Tamil Nadu Forest Department, and it should be a community-driven movement. Otherwise, and we are also planning to have a GIS mapping of all the trees planted, so that we capture each day how many seedlings are planted. We will have a tree clock for that. Each day number should be increasing, and the survival is the main issue. So without public participation, without the public and private partnership, this is not going to be a successful. So if given time, I will explain the models of how we are going to take it forward. But I was quite impressed about Mr. Paul's this kind of it is landscape engineering. It is called as ecological engineering. And to understand the landscape design and then planting site-specific species and bringing water and bringing earth back to the life, I think it is the greatest service we are doing to the sake of survival of the humankind, which is at stake because of lot of destruction and deforestation. So carbon always will be the focus of all these things. Air quality always will be the focus of all the things. We have to ensure that our future generations, what we have enjoyed in the past, or what we are enjoying in the future, what we are enjoying in the present, our future generation should not be deprived of this kind of good ecological and sound environment around them. And thanks, Vishwa, for organizing such a wonderful talk by such an enlightened and wonderful person. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Srivastava. Really enjoyed all the points you've added, sir. Mr. Blanchflower, anything you would like to add to that? Or respond?
No, I'm just very excited about the fact that there's these sort of synchronicity of events that Tamil Nadu government has stepped out and made these commitments to increasing tree cover by almost 50%, which is extraordinary. And over the next 10 years, it's going to be a really exciting and enjoyable adventure to be a part of, and hopefully lots and lots of people can get involved in that.
Wonderful, sir. Would you mind taking another question?
Please, carry on.
Ishwaran Mayil Sami has been waiting for a while. Thank you for your patience. In the interest of time, I would like to ask the rest of the participants asking questions to please keep it short so that we can give everyone a chance. Can my team please allow Ishwaran to unmute? Right. We'll move on to the next raised hand. That is Piridi Ramu. No? Okay, Rajesh.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I think thank you, Vishwa team, for this wonderful speech. It's been really mind-blowing. And I'm a native of Rajapaliam. I'm a volunteer of Atma Prasara team. And I'm eagerly looking forward for the work from Rajapaliam. And one sentence which really struck the chord was connecting your spirit to the land. It was quite interesting, sir. Thank you so much for that. And see, one thing is, I think because of the COVID, we started more getting into the forest and enjoying the nature. But sometimes, just like what happens is, there's a lot of public awareness. When we're trying to enjoy the nature, we also try to exploit by putting plastics and other stuff around. So which is actually not helping the mother nature, actually, right? So when you're trying to walk around, so just like Tamil Nadu government is doing like mass vaccination program. So I'm just wondering if there is a real need to create an awareness and educate our public on a regular basis, how nature conservation will help the whole community as such, actually. So it's just like not going for a picnic, but this has to be fed on a regular basis. That's how it gets into the mind, and that's how it helps us to keep as a duty. We can just give back to the nature that we are supposed to. Thank you, sir. Thanks for your wonderful talk.
I'd just like to just say one thing to that. I think the COVID vaccination program that India has rolled out is extraordinary. No, it's another amazing thing just to take incredible hope from. I mean, the fact that India has done over 1 billion vaccinations. They've all been for free. I think it shows us that if there's a will, there's a way. And it's just about prioritizing what needs to be done. Obviously, India has extraordinary social issues that it needs to deal with. But I think that it's like that: efficiency, concentration, clear direction, and there's so much we can do. It's when we all start to work together and collaborate that there's so many things to do. And waste is definitely one of those things. And there's some great initiatives. There's even a wonderful initiative in Auroville called Wasteless, that is all about educating school children about plastics, about the oceans, about many aspects of using less, waste less. And so I think, and there's numerous of these across the country. So that's another thing that really is a really important a topic. But again, it really helps people at their individual base to work from that and then work up as collaborative community schemes for waste disposal and things like that. So I think it's a great point. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Rajesh, for that question. Now, if I may please take the opportunity to invite the founder and the visionary behind Vishwa, Mrs. Shriwani Mulapuri, to please say a few words, ma'am.
Namaste to all. I would like to first thank Mr. Paul Blanchflower. You have not just for coming on to Vishwa Talks, but to serve Mother Earth, to serve Mother India. Not only have you served, you have shown us a pathway. When Shri Vajpayee ji had started the Golden Quadrilateral for India, we had roads built right from Delhi to Calcutta to Chennai to Mumbai to Delhi. And it's a wonderful project he's done. But along with this project have come up a lot of quarries. Yes, India has developed, but we in India have left sores across the skin of our Mother Earth. And you have shown how to make one such quarry of Ramco Cement into a beautiful place where now the birds are back, the animals are back, and we understand a lot of people are there now just going for walks, having picnics. So special thanks to you. And I would like to also thank the management and the team of Ramco Cement for being a margadarshan, for showing when Vishwa Talks was having talks on education, we used to have 300-400 people coming. But when it was about environment, the number of people who came were around 40. So we realized that environment was not a priority for us Indians. So especially we wanted to have one talk on protecting our ecology every month. What I appreciate about Ramco Cement is that they have been pioneers. They have taken the first step in showing a pathway to make this happen. For taking this initiative, the first initiative. And I hope that many such people will take such initiatives. Vishwa is a platform which wants to connect these change makers with those who are aspiring to make change. I would also like to thank the Vishwa team. I would like to thank each of you who are here in the audience to come and visit Vishwa Talks, because Vishwa Talks wants to bring in a social change across the country. We are working in different causes. Some of them are health, some of them are ecology, human rights. We are especially working with the transgenders, art and culture, community development and education. This is just a beginning. We are also doing 2 causes right now. It's a crowdsourcing platform. It's a crowdfunding platform for social impact causes. Right now, we have 2 fundraisers on top of our website, where one of them is again at Auroville. There is a barren piece of land that a group of people have taken on, and they have Akhilesh, can you show the slide of Auroville? So they have made a complete barren land into a lush forest. So one beautiful thing that this group of people are doing, a lot of people from Auroville are doing, as they said, is they're protecting native forests. Now there, as per Paul G, there are around 1,200 species of native trees. Now all of us there are some who can afford and they do a lot of landscaping, but the issue out there is they don't use local species. And because they don't use local species, we have a lot of our commercial nurseries and our forest departments getting trees that probably grew in Africa and other places, and they're putting it in India, and they require a lot of water. But here are the trees that some of these painstakingly went across, and as Paul G had said, that they have gone to, temples where, imagine you're going around and then you find one tree out there and you say, oh, this is the one remaining tree out of probably these 1,200 species. And they go pick up the seed, they bring it back, they make it into a nursery, and then they let it spread back into our landscape. So like this, not only are they protecting those 1,200 species, they're also bringing back the native birds of our country and our animals. They're giving a space for our animals. They're also, now as he said, that the Amazon forests and the Indonesian forests are some of the last remaining forests, are the lungs of the world, and they are disappearing fast. Vishwa's vision is that we in South India, each of us, wherever, whether it is us or people we know around us, should take up such initiatives like Mr. Paul or Miss Oronevi has taken to make these barren lands back into lush forests. Can you put the video, please, Akhilesh? So, and not only are they doing that, they're also getting children, the people of the next generation, to come and get to see what they have done. Can you imagine that this is what they have done, and they have done it with their just hands? They didn't have equipment to do all this, and they did it over 15 years or 30 years. It is one such fundraising where we are doing, they would like to take an excavator to help in future to do such earthworks. So Vishwa is raising funds for this. We'll be happy if there are corporates who are willing to support this venture of Vishwa's, of Auroville Foundation. And we also want in the future, we would like people to take on, like I saw some of the participants wanting to support. So I wish that, there are people out there who will create seed banks across the country for our and nativeness and nurseries for native plants across our country. So in addition to this, we have, as Paul G had said, we need to scale up the revival of our forests. We need it to be done. There are a few people in Auroville who are doing a few acres, 30 acres or 50 acres, or like Ramco, which is doing an 80 acres or 100 acres or an 800 acres, but that's not sufficient for our country. If we want to cover every single acre in our country, we need many such people who are ready to do such projects in and around their surroundings. We have people who are ready to support you all, who have walked this path and are willing to walk it along with you to make your environment in a similar fashion. And not only this, we need, like today, if any of us want a gardener, there's none available. Most of our people around us are unskilled. We need people like you who are willing to start vocational training centers, which will train people in the grooming of these native trees, these native forests, or even just simple gardeners, such that we will restore our land back. COVID has shown us what it can do, what the environment can do if we don't nourish it, if we don't, because our land is tired, our Mother Earth is tired. As Paul G had said, we need to let it heal, and let it heal so that at least our next generations at least know that we have forests and we can do it, and it's doable. So this is one such venture. Please support people like this, such change makers who would like to make a difference, who have made barren land like this, which you can see, into such green forests with their own two hands and their physical effort. Secondly, we have another fundraiser, which is mental health. A lot of people do not give importance to mental health. And we have Roshni Trust, which has come up with taking a van to people who cannot afford it. They're going with counselors, with psychiatrists, and they're giving medication, and they're supporting people. So we would like to, if any of y'all are interested, or y'all could share it to corporates with CSRs who are willing to, or for individuals, because the cost is 1,50,000 a month, and approximately, and they can reach out to at least, they can make 48 trips in a month if this happens. And Roshni is a 25-year-old trust, and they have already treated 50,000 patients, a well-known name in Secunderabad and Hyderabad. It'll be great if any of y'all can support.